Welcome back to New World Fantasy Football. I am Andrew Marchese, your host, with my co-host, Paulie Kiefarelli. What's up, Paul?
What's going on, man? For those at home, that is not actually my name, but that is funny. As you can see, I am wearing all black today in mourning. My Tampa Bay Buccaneers did not what my heart thought they would do, but did what my brain definitely could see happening, and got absolutely exposed and blown out. I said exposed, I guess blown up and exposed at the same time.
Yeah.
By the Cowgirls. So that was very upsetting, but should not have been surprising. They suck. They're blowing up the coaching staff, as they should. And yeah, that's where we're at. That weekend sucked. But you're having a good time. You're dressed up, all decked out in your team's color.
Saquon Barkley, baby.
You're taking your victory lap. I had a cold take on the Vikings there too, but how are you feeling, man?
Well, man, I feel great because recording this on Saturday morning, right before not right before, but, playoffs are starting. I'm saying that wrong. The next round of the playoffs start today, and the Giants are still in it. They showed what they can do. Brian Dable has turned now I'm going to say Josh Allen. Wow. Can't talk today. I wish, but he's turned Daniel Jones into a capable, smart, instinctual quarterback. Where I think the thing about Jones was he was constantly like in his own head and trying to be perfect at all times, and now he's just playing. So, anyways, yes, I'm excited. The Giants are able to play a division rival in a divisional round, and we get to hopefully see Giants football moving forward this season. But from where they started this year and what the expectations were to where they are now, stoked, man. Stoked.
I know you're excited, man. I know you're excited about Daniel Allen Jones.
Absolutely. Yes. My next son will be named Daniel Saquon.
I wonder what Amanda would have to say about that.
She doesn't get a say.
Well, cool, man. So I think this time, I know we want to make some picks. I'm not sure if you want to celebrate your 4 for 4 calls of last week.
One clap.
Congrats on that. Are you going to go 4 for 4 this time?
Yeah, definitely.
Something tells me not, especially if you make the homer pick. But we'll put a pin in that. So what we talking about today?
So subjects we're talking about today is we got 3 main subjects. It's going to be handcuffs. What's the point? We're going to talk about format, how you play fantasy, how we play fantasy, how we might think the best way to play fantasy is. Part of that is what positions you're actually having to start. It's a big part of it. And then we're going to talk about some quarterbacks and what we're projecting them to be next year. And we'll do a top 12. I think next year maybe we play in we get ourselves into a 12-team league. Not our main league, of course, but
yeah,
that'll probably stay the same forever. But yeah, so let's do it, man.
Yeah.
Tell me what you think. What do you think about
the best way to play fantasy football is with a time machine because nobody knows shit.
That's true. We're all just taking our best guess, no matter what anybody might tell you, what Vegas might tell you. We're all just taking our best guess. Matt Berry is wrong all the time, yet he's got a probably 7-figure career talking about fantasy football. So
yeah, man. Well, he's I never he got a little stale towards the end of his time at ESPN, I think, but I mean, I can't always hate on the GOAT, the dude that kind of brought fantasy football to the mainstream. Started writing about it, and I think it's his voice. I think his voice is the thing. I think he has a better writing voice than speaking voice, but yeah, handcuffs. I think the big thing about handcuffs is what's your format and what does your league look like? I think they're like, I don't want to like cop out that answer. I do have some specific things to talk about with it, but when it comes to handcuffs, I really feel like if you have a deep enough bench to support it, then I think that it's a lot easier to do that with thinner leagues, shallower leagues, or leagues with a bunch of teams in it where it gets pretty sparse on the waiver wire. Then it hurts more, right, to draft a handcuff and ride them the whole season. I think it's situational based on the player. Not every running back has a ready next man up that for sure is going to be the handcuff. I think one of the dumbest things you can do is grab somebody that you assume is the handcuff based on preseason and training camp, but you haven't seen them a lot. And then your RB1 goes down and you're like, sweet, let me plug in Josh Kelly, for example, right? But then it's third stringer on Chargers, whose name escapes me right now, taking all the carries and getting all the points. Yeah. So it is situational, but I think there's more context even to be had. What are your thoughts?
So when it comes to handcuffs, my strategy has been really don't draft them. I'm not a fan of drafting handcuffs because in my draft, what I'm doing is I'm looking for upside at all across every pick. Like up top 4 picks, you're looking for that like high ceiling, but also high floor guys that even their bad weeks aren't like going to crush your team. Later in the draft, I'm not looking for handcuffs. Like if I draft Saquon Barkley, just use that example somewhere in his jersey, I'm not looking to guess whether Gary Brightwell or Matt Breida is going to get the carries, God forbid Saquon goes down. I'm more looking for, well, is there a rookie that I can pick that projects to maybe take that starting role? Rashad White, for example, would have been a good example this year, who I did draft and then drop. That's the other part of handcuffs too that I'll get into. They often don't make it past your roster for like 2 weeks because you're just like, oh, I need to pick up, so-and-so who went off and he's 0.5% owned across all leagues. Like he's virtually unowned by anybody. And that's the waiver wire darling for that week or possibly that whole year. If you really get, fortunate with that. Like I remember many years ago, I don't even know who the starting running back was for, at that point, the Washington Redskins was, R word. But, that was the name of the team.
That was hard R.
Yes.
That was
hard R, man.
Careful. This is a family program.
Yeah. Anyways, Alfred Morris. I remember Alfred Morris being like the week 1 running back pickup that was just like great all year. So those handcuffs you draft, like for example, you drafted Alexander Madison in a few leagues because he's
all of them.
A few all
at the beginning. Alex Madison, no matter what. I had the little sticky note.
Yep. And hey, it made sense because we've seen his value when Dalvin Cook goes down, which is every year except this year when you drafted all of them.
Yes.
And then also the Vikings were like, yeah, running the ball's for losers, so I'm just going to drop back and throw it to Justin Jefferson 12, 13 times a game.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I am not a big proponent of them until week, 12, 13, where your playoffs are about to start. And it's like, okay, let me hedge my bet. I know that I've got 2, maybe 3, if you've gotten that fortunate and you've drafted well and picked up players, traded, whatever. You end up with 3 solid running backs that you can start on your team. Then you're looking at, okay, what are the snap counts for this backup? Do they actually look capable? And if so, and you can afford the roster spot, go ahead and pick those guys up. Pick up 1, 2, if they're even available, because now you're going to need to make sure you have a running back that's getting touches come playoff time.
Yeah, and dude, that's all 100% viable, right? Like, again, we say this all the time. There's no like 100% way to skin the fantasy football cat. So I completely like agree with that in the principle that handcuffs don't always pay off, right? And having somebody just suck a roster spot for you for the entire first 12 weeks of the season, you draft a handcuff guy, it's going to be very tempting to drop them. All of those things are absolutely true. There is a flip side to some of these things, and realistically, we know a couple things, right? When you pay up for running backs in the first couple rounds, there's an inherent risk there. I think that as fantasy players, we know that like, hey, it's risky to take a running back that may get injured. The reality, I looked this up on Sports Reference. Even though injuries like are kind of down-ish traditionally over the last like 6 seasons of football, guys still get injured, and for fantasy positions, running backs are the highest injuries. Linemen get hurt a lot, defensive players get hurt a lot, but when you're talking about single fantasy skill position, running back is the most. In fact, last season, 223 injuries to receiver cores, and 143 injuries to running backs, right? So that sounds like more. The receivers sound like they're getting injured at a higher clip, but most teams roll out 3 receiver sets a lot, 2 receivers at least, for each of the lineups on the field. They're going to dress 6. I think most of the times, unless you got fullbacks or something, they're probably going to dress 3 or 4 running backs. So when you do all of that math and you compile that together, that's a 2-to-1 ratio. So keep that in mind as you're going through your fantasy drafts. Every running back you draft is twice as likely to get hurt as the receivers you draft. So I think that's where that pull and that feeling that you should handcuff your guys comes in. Twice as likely to get hurt as the receivers. So I believe it's situational. I do it when I know I have like a 3 kind of set rule, right? I know that there is a number 1 handcuff guy. They've proven it. There's no one else waiting really in the wings behind them. They've shown they've had some success. The Alex Madison, Dalvin Cook example, right? Jamal Williams, DeAndre Swift, those types of things where you know who the next man up is. And in the case this year, Jamal was actually more fantasy viable because for some reason, DeAndre hates the end zone. So that's the number 1. The second thing is, how high of an investment did I make in this running back? If it's a 4th or 5th round guy, probably not. I don't really care. I'm just going to ride with it at that point. But if it's in the first 3 rounds, I'm really going to think about it. And the third thing that I'm always going to consider is the relative draft cost of the handcuff. A.J. Dillon was crazy high drafted this past year. So he's not a handcuff to me. They're drafting him to be another fantasy viable starter. Tony Pollard, that was even a little rich for my blood. I don't remember what exact round he went in, but he didn't really go in the handcuff range either, because I think most people felt like he was going to end up taking over, which he did. So I don't look at handcuffs until basically like double-digit rounds plus. And at that point, yes, there are players with some more upside, but feel like the risk is palatable enough that I can put somebody on my team versus a player that I might drop in 2 or 3 weeks anyway, as long as all 3 of those factors are in. So if all those things are true and I get that kind of running back as number 1, I like to hedge my bets in a deeper league, but that's just kind of the way I play. That doesn't mean that the way that you're looking at it is not a viable way to go.
Yeah, so I'd say Nick Chubb, Kareem Hunt was another one that was similar to Pollard, where Kareem Hunt was looked at as like kind of like the two, but a very capable and backup that's going to be getting it could have been split carries, it could have been a game script thing. I wouldn't necessarily consider, at least how he was drafted, he became a handcuff.
Right.
How he was drafted was like, okay, he's the second guy, but he's going to still get 10 to 15 touches a game, which is fine. Yeah. So, yeah, the whole handcuff range. Well, first off, the Ezekiel Elliott, Tony Pollard. Zeke was like a third round ADP. Pollard was an 8th or 9th round, kind of in that range, 8th or 9th round ADP. So he was definitely being drafted as the backup, but he was he was the bet that made sense to take. That was a good place to roll the dice on.
A lot of people
running backs that could.
They took him because they knew he was going to take the job.
I feel like a lot of that had to do with maybe when you started drafting. Like if you drafted really like before the preseason even started, which like don't do that. Maybe so. But then like as it went on, is like you could kind of tell, all right, they're gonna really use Pollard a lot.
Yeah.
But anyways, when it comes to handcuffs, I would say, man, like you're saying, it has to be a very specific situation to want that specific handcuff. Number one. And then number two, you got to be realistic with yourself too about what kind of fantasy player are you when it comes to handcuffs? Because as I've said already about the kind of player I am, I'm fidgety. I'm impatient. Like I'm looking to pick up players. I don't want to sit on my hands with players. If there's guys who are making an impact week 1, week 2, their snap counts are up. I don't care about the position so much. I want to try to get those guys on my roster. And I know the first place I'm going to cut is my handcuff running backs. So like to me, it's like, all right, all I'm doing is delaying the inevitable for my roster that I'm going to be picking up another player. I might as well just take the shot on on the roulette table of running backs later in the draft. Like maybe this guy actually ends up being the starter for whatever reason it may be. And if he does,
usually injuries.
usually injury, but it can be, well, for whatever reason, coaching staff is just loving this guy and he's earned a lot of reps. And there you go. Like you've got yourself at least a flex guy for your roster, if not an RB2 right off the bat. And maybe if you really get lucky, a freaking RB1. So, yeah, that's my conclusion on when it comes to handcuffs.
Yeah, well, I guess you decide, America.
Absolutely. So we're going to talk about some positions on your fantasy starting lineup that it's been debated, questioned. People are frustrated. We'll start with tight ends. How do you feel, Paul, about tight ends being a mandatory start?
Well, you know how I feel, but I'll, for the purposes of this, take them out of the equation. I'm over it. I not enough teams feature a tight end in their offense. And I'm even going to take a step back and be even more fundamental with that. If there's not enough good players at a position that you can't have 12 viable guys, I don't think it should be a fantasy position. I get it. People love the positional advantage. If you had Travis Kelce this year, you probably love having tight end leagues. But if you were relying on Dallas Goedert as your guy and he gets hurt for, a large portion of the season, and then you have absolutely nothing, trying to decide, is this guy going to goose me? Is Cole Kmet going to goose me? Is Jawan Johnson going to get a touchdown or goose me? No, I'm not into it. I think that, to me, tight ends are pass catchers. Remove the tight end designation from your league and you will have a cleaner fantasy football league. Wrap them up into pass catchers. Travis Kelce, George Kittle, Andrews, Hawkinson. They're all viable players that you can play, but 3 of them dudes are flex options. They should be flex options based on the amount of points that they score. So no, I think I actually have it pulled up in front of me here. I was looking at it. All of last season, how many tight ends do you think scored more than 100 fantasy points?
So you are talking about the season that just passed, right?
Yeah, this season, regular
half
season.
PPR, I'm assuming.
Yeah.
So let's just solidify that now. Anytime we're talking about pass catchers, we're talking about half PPR.
Yeah.
That's going to be the rule. Okay, cool. How many tight ends scored at least 100 fantasy points this year?
So 100 sucks. Let's just call it in a 17 game.
Yeah, 100 100 points is like what? You're averaging 7-8 points a game?
Yeah.
Something like that. I'm going to say obviously Kelce. I am going to guess that Mark Andrews didn't even get there. Maybe he was close, maybe just there.
He actually did, believe it or not. He was disappointing because all tight ends suck. It's all disappointing.
Yeah, like what are we going to do when Travis Kelce retires? I think Kittle got there because he had a few big games where he surged.
Yeah.
Evan Ingram, did he make it like late?
Yeah, he actually did. But that threshold is really low, man. And
how many?
So it ended up being 16. Tyler Conklin.
Okay.
Into that conversation, right? But that threshold, like you said, means you scored about 7 points a game. That's crap. Like, what is the point of starting a position when like what you should reasonably expect is about 7 fantasy points from that position? It doesn't make sense to me. There's so many good wide receivers now that you can flex the position and scores will be up across your league. And you can feel confident that you're starting a person that should be featured in the offense. I don't have those numbers in front of me, but I promise you the consistency numbers are crap, because what's going to happen is the Jawan Johnsons of the world, the Dawson Knoxes of the world, their numbers are being floated by 6 games where they scored touchdowns, right? Everything else is like 3 points, 4 points, 5 points. So to even like sneak that around even further is, out of all of these players, I'm going to argue that there's probably 6 players that actually had week-to-week viability as a fantasy starter, and that's not good enough for me to justify having that as a position. What do you think?
I think you're a best ball player. Just go play best ball. I wholeheartedly disagree. And I'll tell you why. It's very simple. I'm like the Joker, man. I love the chaos. I want it. I want the chaos in drafts. I want to take advantage of the people who can't value a tight end well. I want to be able to pick out the next tight end that's coming up and hit on that, which is hard to do because every tight end that comes out in the NFL draft is like, this guy's the next Gronk. This guy's the next Kittle. No, they're freaking not.
You tried that with Kyle Pitts.
yet I still want tight ends. Kyle Pitts is a whole nother conversation. We'll see what happens with the QB there, his own development, blah, blah, blah. Tight ends, in my opinion, for NFL teams, they're a million times better if they can actually block. Because now you're not tipping your hand every fucking play. Like, Kyle Pitts, if you can't block, bro, I'm talking to you, Kyle. You can't learn to block halfway decent, then every team's gonna know you're just a big pass catcher. Like, that's it. And like, not to say you still can't be successful, because you can. You can go up and moss people, and that's great if you had a decent quarterback. But I don't know, man. I think the best tight ends we see, whether it be real life, fantasy, whatever, are the ones that can do both. And that's easier said than done, obviously. If you're a 99 overall on Madden because you can block and you can run routes and you can catch and you can make the spectacular catch and whatever, your route running is great, blah, blah, blah. Yes, of course, obviously you're a great tight end. But to the discussion we're talking about, I like the tight end position because I want people to be desperate. I think that's myself included, I think that's fun for the chaos.
That's fun for you? That sucks.
It sucks if you suck. If you can dig into the matchups and you can find a tight end that can maybe have a good game, or if you're streaming, or if you can find that next guy, or if you just say screw it, I'm dropping, I'm throwing my whole wad down on Kelsey. Like, if that's what you want to do, I think that's fun. But I think that it's solidified that you are the fantasy hipster and I am the fantasy boomer.
Yeah, I think it's important to have both of these perspectives, right? And obviously, I don't think there is like a 100% correct answer here. I definitely disagree. Like, I think that what you're talking about speaks to positional scarcity and being able to pick the right players. But I don't think you can predict tight end. So many of these guys are touchdown or bust, and you can't predict that. It's just a matter of the randomness of football. Of if they happen to win a matchup in the red zone and get the touchdown, you're going to feel really good about it. If not, you're on goose alert. And I don't think that it's fun to play fantasy when you know that any person that you start in a position is a high probability of a goose. I kept talking to you about that all the time in my other league where I was playing tight ends, where it was like, it became a joke to me. I didn't even care. I was like, well, I'll pick up this guy who's going to get me like 2 points, whatever. Who cares? The guy on the other side's probably only going to get 3 or 4 points anyway. Like, that's very dumb to me, because I don't think that there's any strategy involved in that. I think once you get past a certain level, so yes, of course, when you're building a team, right, in a tight end league, I'm done with it. If that's how I have to play, I'm picking a tight end in the first 2 rounds. I'm going to go get the guy. I'll pay the ridiculous premium for it because I know what type of ridiculous advantage that is. But, beyond that, everything past, I looked it up here, everything past the 6th man down is total touchdown or bust. I just don't see that as being really valuable for fantasy. And yes, you can be as smart as you want to be, but George Kittle is probably the best blocking and catching tight end as a combo. And when he gets injured, you get to feel like a really cool guy with a top 3 positional premium. Now you're on goose patrol, churning. How many different players can goose my lineup in a 6-week stretch? No, I'm over it. Over tight ends.
And once again, bring me the Joker, bring me Bane. I was born into this chaos. I thrive in it. I love it. I want to be desperate. I want others to be desperate. I want to use them in trades. I want the crapshoot of the waiver wire tight end. I love it, man. I think more of a gambler than you at heart, So that kind of appeals to me. Like, and I am not only am I a gambler, I am a overconfident gambler. So I'm like, any guy I throw in, they're gonna hit. They're gonna hit. My whole life savings, put it on number 9. Put it on number 9. It's good. I'm making it. I'm gonna hit it. You know, like that's kind of I have that tendency, and a lot of the just this is me as a human being. I have always gravitated towards, I love poker. It's a mix of luck, probability, and skill, right? I love that combination, and the tight end position is perfect for it. So, how about kickers?
I know that about you, man. You're a sick man that you want that chaos. But I personally am going to side on the numbers there. Kickers, definitely not as popular of a take on kickers. I guess you can just call me the less is more guy. I think the more focus that you can put on the actual skill position players in a league, the better. I will say that I'm not as hard on this take as I am for the tight ends. Like, I don't really care. There's enough good kickers and viable kickers that it's okay. The way that kickers get deployed these days, though, is a little bit annoying because you can be a really good kicker, but then you have the Brandon Staleys of the world that decide that Galaxy Brain football is the only way to play, and it's 4th and 7 on the 35-yard line. Go ahead and throw it. That's the best thing to do. That's what the book says. So some of that is annoying and hard to predict. I want to try a league with nothing, with just give me all the skill positions. That's all I want. Reduce it down to nothing. That's like, I want to try playing that way. If you want kickers in your league, I guess that's fine. I think there's enough numbers viability there to support it, but I'm all about reduction. What's your thoughts?
You should just go play best ball. That's my thoughts. No, I am very like, I can take them or leave them. It's different than tight ends, I think, because your argument against tight ends is for a fact there's not enough for every team to even have a chance at a good one. Kicker's the ultimate crapshoot. You can draft Justin Tucker. That doesn't necessarily mean he's gonna, always be the top scorer every week. Like every week he plays. Travis Kelce, I mean, you can pretty much assume like every pass catcher is going to have a couple dud weeks. It just is what it is. Every player, really. But whatever. If you play fantasy for 17 weeks, like 14 of those, Travis Kelce is going to have he's going to be a advantage for your lineup. Kickers they're just the ultimate crapshoot. And I'm fine with that. But let's put it this way. The league I commission, I'm not going to take them out. But if I was in the league and they're like, we're not doing kickers, I'd be like, okay, whatever. Don't care.
Yeah, I sort of feel the same way to that. It's not that big of a deal, but the most recent example of this to me, Brett Maher, who
Brett. Love it. Keep missing them kicks.
Let's take a look. Like Brett Maher,
Maher. Let's get his name right. Maher. What is his name?
Yeah, I have no idea.
Brett. Let's call him Brett Kicker. Let's call him Dallas Kicker.
Yeah, let's call him Brett Maher. Maybe is not going to be on the Dallas Cowboys anymore. After what?
Like tomorrow.
The most epic yips case I've ever seen. But independent of that, fantasy season, it was the classic story. I needed a kicker on bye. I don't even remember who my kicker was. I don't care about kickers. Just that week, this man scored 25 points, something stupid and ridiculous like that. Made everything, was already like a top, I think, 5 kicker in the league. I picked him up, literally said to my friend, watch this dude goose me. Guess what happened the next week?
Straight up goosing.
I don't think it was a straight up goose. I think it was the gentleman's goose. He missed an extra point. I want to say he got 2 points, and I ended up losing by like 2 points. So
Yeah. So like one field goal makes a difference, as it often does in real football, as it often does in fantasy football.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean,
if you're all about kickers, I'm okay with it. I just, I guess I'm trying to be a new age galaxy brain.
if we get enough subscribers at some point that want to join a league, we're just going to do a kicker only league. Like it's going to be like a 6-team league, and everybody just gets 4 kickers, and that's it.
It's the worst league I've ever heard.
Yeah, it'll be called the shit kickers.
It's like oh man, if this one kicker goes down to injury, my third starter will actually score some points.
Man, yeah, just have it like what? I don't know, 8 times 4, right? That's 32. So it'll be an 8-team league, 4 kickers each. That's it. That's all you get.
Big maths, quick maths.
Multiplication tables. I should know them by now. So this has been a bit of a debate. Well, a big debate in leagues that we've played in together, and we're going to spend some time on this. IDP. And if you don't know what that means, which I'm sure you do if you listen to this, individual defensive player. If you're going to do it, what should the approach be? Or just don't do it at all. You just have team defense or no defense. So what are you thinking? What's your thoughts on IDP and what format is best?
IDP, irresponsible degenerates looking for points. It's a more advanced way to play fantasy football, in my opinion. I think it reflects like a total knowledge of the game, right? I think that most people that play fantasy ignore the defensive side of the ball. That's when you get up to, get a drink or eat more chicken wings or take a piss or whatever when your team is not down the field scoring. But there are really great players on that side of the ball and players that are difference makers and players that can get points. Obviously, I literally just got through talking about less is more for fantasy. So the reality of the experiences that I've had with IDP have been mixed. I think you definitely can play when you have the great defensive players. Like there really isn't a ton of viability. Guys that get tackles on a consistent basis. TJ Watt was crazy because of all the tackle numbers that he gets, plus the sacks, plus everything else he does. He was an absolute stat monster. Michael Parsons, oh my God. The dudes that can play basically every position on the line and not just, I guess IDP, like the cheat code is high tackle numbers give you a safe floor for those guys. But if those guys can also rush the passer and get the high impact plays, the touchdowns, the safeties, the fumble recoveries, all of that stuff, like those dudes are an absolute cheat code in IDP. My opinion is we tried this in our main league. It did not go over well. We tried to dip our toes in the water with one IDP. It was frankly boring to do that because there's just so many defensive players that yeah, like the top 3 or 4 guys were like a pretty big advantage, but you can pretty much choose between anybody and have like at least 8 to 10 points somewhere in that range, especially because if you're only going to have one IDP, it's all linebackers basically, and linebackers rack up tackles, even the dudes you've never heard of. So my opinion is if you're going to do IDP, don't dip your toes in the water. Dive in, full send, go all the way into the freezing cold water. You got to do 2 or 3 positions at least to have coverage across the field. And that's defensive linemen, linebackers, and defensive backs. If you do that, it can be very fun, but it's a lot to keep track of. Just be like aware of that.
Yeah, I completely agree with you on that, man. We saw so the example that you're speaking of, the one year we went with the one defensive player. Yeah, he was a top player in fantasy at the IDP position, and that was actually Blake Martinez on the New York Giants. I'm not saying that just because he's a Giant, but it's true. He was like the 6th or 7th overall player because the cheat code for that ended up being if you're a middle linebacker or you're a top tackler, like maybe like Jamal Adams or something like that. Even though he's a safety, like he's a big tackle guy. If you had a guy who was a really good tackler on a bad team and their defense was on the field a lot, you'd get a lot of points because he has to make tackles. Like if he doesn't make 12 to 14 tackles a game, like he had a really bad game, And then, but yeah, I mean, I won that year because I had a few big performances by TJ Watt. And it was crazy. If you got a strip sack fumble and they recovered it, it was like a 12-point play. Like that's more than a stack of a QB. Well, yeah, I mean, if it was like a short passing touchdown that you got like Joe Burrow to Jamar Chase, like strip sack fumble was like a better play for your fantasy team, which is weird. The scoring formats very up for debate on IDP, but I'm 100% with you, man. If you're going to do IDP, do the 3 levels. And also, like, know your league. If you've got a bunch of football fanatics, they'll probably be into it. One of the leagues we play in,
Casuals,
you might be able to do it. There's some casuals mixed in there with some hardcore people. Obviously, we're pretty hardcore. If you got a team of or a league of all really hardcore football fans, and they want to like spend the time, and it's fun for them to dig into the dumpster of IDP and just really go through that, it's fun. If you have a lot of casual people that play a pretty standard format and they don't really want to spend the time or have the time to spend, they're going to just get frustrated really fast and be like, this is stupid. Why do I need to know like all these offenses and now I need to know all these defenses too? Like, come on. It could be a bit much. So once again, goes to knowing your league and what's best for your league. So there's really no yes or no for this. It's just like, what is your league feeling and is it enjoyable for everybody? And yeah. So, and then it's about getting the scoring format right because the scoring formats can be funky as hell. And yeah, I mean, TJ Watt, as I said, he was boom or bust. He'd have games where he's like, he got 2 tackles. That was it for his stats. Pressures didn't matter. I'm sure he got plenty of pressures or he got injured because he got injured a lot too. But he'd get me like less than 2 points. But then he has a game where he's got, 3 sacks and a strip sack fumble and he's got me 27, 28 points, So the scoring format is a big deal with IDP.
So this is kind of a side note question. DST. I know that in a lot of cases they take away DST when you go to IDP, right? Because that's, for the most part, that's what's replacing DST.
Yeah.
What do you think about a league just removing DST altogether? Completely taking it out of the equation, offense only.
I just don't think it's as fun. I like the defenses. Once again, like it kind of just goes back to the player person that I am. I like the variance. I enjoy it. I find it fun. And you have your top flight defenses that, especially, if you're playing with those filthy casuals, as they would say in the Souls community. I know that's like a whole nother podcast, but they're going to be those people who are like, I need to get, like next year, it's going to be like, I need to get San Francisco's defense in like the 6th round. There will be those people. And then defenses are volatile every year, especially if you say, all right, well, who am I? What's his name? D'Amico Ryans, right? D'Amico Ryans. I'm getting that right. He's the defensive coordinator.
Yeah. Oh, he's gonna get a head coaching job, assuming that he gets a fair shot at it, which can be another pod for me.
Well, yeah, I think he will. I mean, he's going to get interviews. I think that there's a good chance he does. Kind of the trend of the league is the offensive minded people, which I think is a little bogus. Like, if you know football, you know football. If you know ball, you know ball.
Well, what's the point of having an offensive coordinator then? It's like, oh no, we have to get the offensive minded head coach.
Who knows? I mean, I don't know. The NFL is as they've said forever, it's a copycat league. More offensive coordinators who became head coaches, I think, have been successful in recent history. So these bonehead owners are like, the offensive coordinators. Like, there's a lot of owners who they're just money people. They have a lot of money, and that's what it's about. But they have to hire people, So that sounds good. Hire him. We'll fire him next year if he sucks. So, yeah, I think D'Amico Ryans will get a shot. But point being, there's a lot of fantasy players who aren't going to know that. They aren't going to see that. They aren't going to care. They're going to just be like, plug and play. San Francisco's defense was amazing. I remember watching that game on my couch being like, damn, dude, I need to get San Francisco's defense next year. And that's it. It's solidified. They decided week 13 this year, they need to get San Francisco's defense next year. And they will do anything to get them. Like, that's just, there are a lot of fantasy players that are like that, just stuck in their head. I have to get this player. I have to get this defense, have to get this kicker, have to get this QB. It's just, yeah.
I don't know about you, but I would rather pay a premium on a kicker than a defense. If I'm going to pay a premium, which I won't really, but if I'm going to pay a premium on anybody, I'd rather pay a premium on a Justin Tuck versus a defense, because I know Justin Tucker is going to get deployed, is going to get used, he's going to score points. If I end up being the loser that goes 49ers all the way, defensive players get hurt. It's the reality of the game. Bosa goes down, a couple other players go down, and then you end up holding the bag like a cuck.
Well, yeah, and it's like, it's so difficult to predict defense too, because the way the NFL is now, as good of a defense as you may be, a couple penalties, all it takes, one bad pass interference call that goes, 50 yards down the field, they're going to get scored on, even if they deserve, maybe not touchdown, but there's going to be points scored against them. And then you have to also think Denver was a good example this year. There's a few other examples too, but you talked about the Colts before, where their solid defenses, their defensive roster is good, but it didn't matter because their offense just couldn't stay on the field. So you're picking a good defense in theory, but like, they got to play. The time of possession is like 2-1, and they're just gassed. So that happens too.
that Denver was able to produce as a defense as well as they did. I think that's incredible. With how trash
Really
their
good.
was all year, it's unbelievable they were able to hold some of these scores down. Like, oh my God, we're time of possession. Time of possession.
Yeah. Yeah, you lost your fantasy matchup. Maybe you didn't lose your fantasy matchup, but you had a bad defensive performance because Russell Wilson and that offense was garbage. You know, and it sucks because you're like, you can see the defense is a good defense. You can see like all the reasons why they're a play in fantasy, and then, well, offense just has a complete dud, and it doesn't matter because they're just going to get scored on and get yardage. But
We just intercepted these fools and turned them over 43 seconds ago, and now we got to run back out there. That's ridiculous. That's not
super unfair.
Part.
Super unfair for those defenders, and it sucks for fantasy. It's a crappy situation in fantasy. I mean, I did not make the finals. I basically got knocked out because the Broncos offense decided they were going to be terrible. And then at the same time, their defense was like, that was the game where they're like, we're done. We're done carrying this team against the Rams. The Baker Mayfield-led Rams.
Because I did that. I started them.
Yeah. Yeah, that was a fun week. Yeah, that really sucked. I mean, that made me – I was very upset at that game because I got negative, as we all did. If you started the Broncos that week, you know, I mean, they were a good start, but they weren't. So, yeah. And then I lost by like 3-4 points. But also I have to say I'm the idiot who decided I'm going to start Dalton Schultz with a good matchup over George Kittle, who had a quote unquote bad matchup, but that was on me. I overthought that one and failed. So, anyways,
good matchup for tight
ends. Right? Hey, I heard Arizona was loving letting any Joe Schmo tight end just
for sure. I'm still salty about that. We should have talked about this before. It's something that I thought was funny thinking about it on tight ends, but I just didn't bring it up. I want you to finish this sentence for me. Taysom Hill is
Tim Tebow.
Should he be a tight end? Should he be considered a tight end in fantasy football?
Not even for a second. Guy doesn't line up as a tight end. Why would that count as a tight end? I hate that subject, man. I can't stand Taysom Hill. I can't stand that that's Taysom Hill's. Well, I don't like Taysom Hill at all, period, in any way. But I did start him once. I streamed him when he was a QB last year, and he did pretty good because he ran for like a bunch of yards and 2 touchdowns. But yeah,
but stream QB spot or in a tight end spot?
He was moved to a quarterback at that point.
Okay.
He was. They changed the designation for him to be a QB, and I had like no QB for whatever reason. I was like, whatever. I'm going to pick up Taysom Hill and hope he runs the ball, and that's what he did. He ran the ball a lot and for 2 touchdowns. So that worked out that week.
That last year they removed his designation, and I think he did actually line up sometimes at the tight end spot, or at least went out as a pass catcher, if I remember correctly. Did that 0 times this year, and they never changed the designation on platforms.
So weird to me, and yeah, that whole thing is. I'm not even going to get into that too much. So let's talk about quarterbacks, man. How do you feel about early QB? And when I say early, I'm saying top four rounds.
The first time that I have ever actually done early QB was this year with Josh Allen. So I guess I have to be feeling pretty decent about it. And like a 4th round, like to me, that was a value. Our league that we play in is pretty competitive, but it's also, a little bit old school in that sense that they're just not going to pay super crazy premiums. We don't have that guy, somebody's cousin that picks Josh Allen or picks Patrick Mahomes in the first round. We just don't have that guy in our league. Thankfully, I think it makes it for a more fun experience and much more challenging. But yeah, I mean, first 4 rounds it's a little saucy to pay for a quarterback, but it's justifiable with some of the numbers these guys are putting up. Like, we spent a lot of time last week talking about how much more valuable wide receivers are becoming. It's like, well, okay, ipso facto, that means quarterbacks are becoming more valuable too. And this year there was a gap. There was a gap between like the first 3 to 5 guys and everybody else kind of lumped together. So if you paid a quarterback premium on the right guy this year, it worked out. Generally speaking, I don't think it's a good idea. I still don't think it's a great idea to do that unless you're really convinced on a guy and he absolutely destroys value, because you could argue, like, I loved having Josh Allen this year. It was awesome. It was a lot of fun. He tweaked his UCL and had some rough weeks on kind of like the back half of the season, which hurt me a lot. But, you know, if I would have gone with second choice Jalen Hurts 2 rounds later, I'd be in better shape and would have a better team build. So generally speaking, no, but you can do it and justify it in the right situation. What's up?
Did you make the playoffs with Josh Allen as your QB?
Sure did not. But, you know, I had other problems.
Most people, I would say, did. The guy who won our league had Josh Allen. So, well, my league, whatever, you know what I mean. We're in multiple leagues together. So that's just to be a jerk to you. But so I think it's kind of a similar situation, but there's just more of them to tight end. If you're not paying up for the superstars, and when I say superstars, I'm talking about 25 plus points on a near week-to-week basis. Because at QB, you need to have that consistency. That's how you are going to determine a lot of how your roster is going to look that week. Because if you have some shaky quarterback in a bad matchup that you don't even want to play, like you'd rather stream somebody, then you might be looking at some more upside guys in your flex or whatever. But those top guys, and we'll get into who they are, but obviously Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, those consistent studs, I think it makes sense to pay up for those guys because you know you're getting a great baseline pretty much every week. That's worth an investment. Just how high is the investment going to be, really, is the question. And you might get priced out of those guys where it's like, if somebody's taken them in the first round, to me, that's getting priced out of a Josh Allen. But if he's sitting there in the third round, I have the opportunity to take Josh Allen. I feel fine with that. I feel good about that, actually, because I said, okay, I've got 2 studs, and now I have Josh Allen to give me a baseline every week. Like, that's great, But it's like every draft is different, and the way it breaks down. If you can get value for those guys, then great. If you can't, don't force a quarterback pick. So
yeah, 100%. And that's the context that needed to be given, right? The league that we're talking about, you don't have to pay a crazy premium on quarterbacks because you got to know your league. You have to know who you're drafting with. Our league this league we're talking about does not put a crazy premium on quarterbacks. But in most cases, if you want Josh Allen, you got to go get him at least in the third round. And
in our more casual league, he was a first rounder.
Oof. Yeah, I remember.
Or maybe I think he was at the turn because he ended up with Josh Allen and Devontae Adams.
Turn, yeah.
But first, second, whatever, like right there. So yeah, and in the majority of your of leagues you're in, that's what it's going to take. And my argument is always like, unless I'm getting supreme value for one of those top guys, which often I'm not, some of the top 5 quarterbacks every year are in the 6th through the 8th round. See it all the time, you know? So it's like you can build your core and then still get a quarterback who's going to be very consistent, or at the very least have some blow up weeks that's going to help win you matchups, you know? So let's get into that then. Who are you want to do 1 through 10 or 1 through 12? Or do you want to do 12? I think 1 through 12 is better because chances are we agree on the top ones more than the ones that are.
Yeah, and I think that there's a chance we don't put them in the same order, probably.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think mine. A couple might surprise you near the bottom, and I'm gonna have to qualify some of these based on what I think is going to happen. Like the point of doing rankings now is, I guess, just for fun because so much is going to change. We haven't even done the draft. Who gets a receiver? Who gets a good looking receiver is going to change a lot of this for me.
What's the coaching like around them too? That's a big part of it, in my opinion. That means a lot to me.
Look at Daniel Jones. He went from Danny Slimes to Danny Dimes overnight.
Yeah, and he won that Nickelodeon award too. So that was awesome. So he really was Danny Slimes.
Well, I hope it doesn't happen like Jonathan Taylor, because Taylor won the MVP last year. Sad face.
Oh, yeah, that's rough. So who's your number 1?
Probably just in my heart, but I'm going Josh number 1. I think, he had a pretty significant elbow injury and still finished in like the top 2 of quarterbacks this year. So he stays healthier. I think that his combination of being able to control the game through the air and on the ground is unrivaled. I want that. I want that consistency, and it's just fun. It's a fun offense to watch. So if I'm picking a first overall quarterback, I understand that he probably won't even finish on a points per game basis as the number 1, but I'm going with that. Then I actually might be surprising to you because of the lack of rushing.
Hold on. Let's just do one at a time. So your number 1 is Josh Allen, right?
Right.
My number 1 is Josh Allen. Yeah.
Same reasons.
Same reasons. And, the only knock on Josh Allen is he can turn the ball over sometimes. But, it doesn't matter.
That's real. That does take points away.
It takes points away, but, he's going to go rush for the 2 points you're going to lose. He's going to go rush for the 20 yards. Once they get the ball back, or he's going to throw a long pass that's going to get it all back, in the matter of a second. So, yeah, I'm all in on Josh Allen, number 1. I will say this, because this has nothing to do with the rankings, but this is a tiny event session, because I already had it to my wife. She's heard it many times. Daniel Jones gets no respect. Fantasy, real football. Josh Allen gets all this praise despite his carelessness with the ball sometimes, because he makes these big plays. Daniel Jones doesn't, and he can run the ball and blah, blah, blah. And still people are like, yeah, just sit in the corner, Daniel. God, it's frustrating to me. Anyways, number 2. I'll take this one. We'll go back and forth. Who starts? I think there can be some disagreement here, but I'm going to go Mahomes.
Actually, there isn't. And it's funny. I was about to say I thought you might be surprised, but he doesn't rush that much. I think he rushes enough to give a little bit of a bonus and a little bit of stability. But dude, he's just an absolute cheat code. He's ridiculous. It doesn't matter. The whole narrative this offseason and why he fell behind Josh in the first place is he lost one of the most dynamic receivers in the game. It doesn't matter. They rolled out a bunch of dudes named Joe as the receivers. He still has Trav Kelce, which is his number one receiver. It doesn't matter. The scheme, his ability, his way to process the game is up and above everything. I'll take Patrick Mahomes before I take the next best rusher. And do you want me to go with my third, or how do you want to do it?
I'm just going to speak on Mahomes just a little bit. The reason I'm pretty sure I know who your number 3 is, probably the same as me, but Mahomes is not going to bust on you. Like, it just, unless he gets hurt, which obviously any player can get hurt, he is not going to bust on you. He is just too good. And the way that they scheme up these plays in the red zone, he's usually getting credit for a touchdown one way or the other. It's very rare that it's a straight handoff. You know, I mean, it happens. But then at the same time, you're like, well, it's cool because Mahomes they're still going to score 5 touchdowns a game, basically. So if 3 of those are Mahomes in any way, you're happy. You know, and he will run enough to where the hidden value is like not only is the fantasy points, he keeps the drive going. So he's continuing to keep his team in a position to score, which means he has a higher chance of scoring on the drive. So his consistency, and their defense is not like rock solid either. So he has to score.
Yeah,
you know?
he's an absolute beast in fantasy. And like you said, I didn't even think about that aspect because I was just thinking of total touchdowns. But yeah, their version of a rushing touchdown is a pass, or that arguable whether that should count as a pass or not, that little underhand shovel into the belly of a tight end or a fullback, which credits your quarterback with a free touchdown. So
I love it. I love it.
Yeah, Patty Ice, baby. Stole the nickname from Matt.
Absolutely. He actually deserves it. I don't think Matt Ryan ever deserved it. Matty Ass is what I always called him, because when the playoffs came around, he was ass.
Yes, I'm a Colts fan, as you know. So
who's your number 3?
I concur. Jalen. It's got to be Jalen. The jump that he took, which I knew he was going to take a jump this year with adding AJ Brown. I did not think he was going to take this much of a jump. So he complements his already ridiculous rushing ability with the ability to actually score through the air, move the game, improve the offense overall to one of the best offenses in football. He could finish number 1. He could. He absolutely can finish number 1 next year. And if he had played a full season, I think he would have finished number 1 this year. So I think any of these guys can go top 3. And I think this is where we hit a tier break. What do you think?
Yeah, definitely. Those are the top 3. I would say your general consensus is going to be, if there's like half a tier, I would say Josh Allen is the number 1 in a tier alone, but it's very, very close with Mahomes and Hurts just behind him. And those two, to me, Mahomes and Hurts, are interchangeable. I just trust the consistency of Mahomes more. So you're picking Mahomes in the top 4 rounds, like we already said, depending on your league and how they draft. But you are trying to be risk averse in those top 4 picks, while at the same time getting a lot of upside. And Mahomes represents that. And so does Hurts, but I think Hurts has you're more surprised if Mahomes has a dud than if Hurts has a dud, you know? All right. So number 4, I have got Joe Cool, the cigar smoking man, Joseph Burrow. He is my number 4th QB. And he's kind of like a poor man's Mahomes, where he's got that complex understanding of passing game. he's also got the stud receivers that will bail him out. And it's not even to bail him out. It's just make the most of his passes, Like Jamar Chase can very easily take a 5-yard slant and
does he have the
7 yards
game?
What's that?
Does he have the best weapons in the game?
I'd have to really think that one through. I would say no, and I'll tell you why. I think Jalen Hurts, because I think Devonta Smith is a tad better than Higgins, even though I respect Higgins and I like Higgins a lot, and he can be a 1 for a lot of teams, Giants. But Dallas Goedert is so much better than Hayden Hurst. Like, Dallas Goedert hasn't really been able to put a full season together because of injuries. Dude's a freaking stud.
There's a lot of loaded offenses. They got a couple fast guys down in Miami too.
Yeah, they're pretty good. They're pretty good.
Decent.
Yeah. So, anything you want to say about Burrow?
No, in fact, the only thing I'm going to say about Burrow is he's awesome. Probably one of my favorite players. Just like anybody that like shows up to a press conference with the Elton John purple shades and the white suit, you're like going up a couple rungs in my book. He is like, he's a stud. Like, he's just a freaking stud. Like, and you can put that on the suspicious list if you want. I don't care. Like, he's a studly man, and I think that matters in the game. He is all like dripping confidence. His team knows that he can win at any given moment, and I think that gives the entire offense like a whole different look. They run the ball effectively-ish. But I think they have enough balance in their offense that it's not always loaded up on Chase. But he has the dynamic options. He's a great quarterback. He's legitimately great at this point. So the only knock that I have on him is that he's not my fourth guy. My fourth guy next year is Justin Fields. Now, provided this is my assumption that he's going to get a little more help next year, whether that's through the draft, free agency, whatever the case may be. I think they have to find a way to help him. Like, is that offensive line? Is that a receiver? I don't know. I don't care. The dude's rushing ability, oh my God. Like, I don't remember the play exactly, but I remember watching his line get absolutely blown up. Two DNs chased him like 20 plus yards backwards. The man turned his back on the play. He turned his back on his receivers. You never do that. They chased him 20 yards back. He turns a corner, burns them backwards, ends up rushing for like a 28-yard gain, and gets pushed out of bounds right in front of the goal line. It was the craziest. Like, Lamar's had incredible plays. Jalen's had incredible plays. But just the arrogance to turn your back on defenders, switch your hips, and burn them, I've never seen anything like that. That ability and that consistency from the rushing is what flips him over Joe Burrow, in my opinion.
Yeah, so he is Justin Fields is absolutely capable of those highlight plays. And the thing is, his highlight plays, they're going to score you a lot of fantasy points. He is my number 5. I have him at 5. So yes, we just have those two flip-flop. Totally, makes sense. Totally normal. I will just say, same kind of argument I made for Mahomes over Hurts. This is kind of that tear down in the same argument. I think Fields is much more likely to bust on a week than Burrow. Like, if Burrow has a bad week and he scores 15 to 18 points, he doesn't crush you. He gives you a chance. Fields can really if for whatever reason he just isn't running that game, or the defense is just like really keying in on his running and he's not passing the ball well, his receivers still suck, he can get you single digit points, and that's what really hurts you.
I'm gonna interject and disagree with that only slightly, because to me it's gonna feel like this is my worst case scenario. Like the worst case scenario to me next year for Justin Fields, outside of injury, right? Injury is always the worst case scenario, which of course, rushing quarterback, you're a little more exposed to that. But a running quarterback, dude, it works. It just literally works. Like, this is why it drives me crazy when I see plays, because when it's Kyler, when it's Fields, when it's Jalen, like a 7 or 8 yard rush is literally always there. It's always there. It seems like whether they spy you or not, you can gain some yardage by just tucking the ball and going and beating somebody to the edge of the sideline. But so I think that floor exists enough. I don't think a rushing quarterback can ever truly bust. The Tom Brady 180 yards and no touchdowns, 5-point bust, I don't think is truly possible. And I'll tell you from my experience, like I had Hurts last season, before like the gigantic breakout with AJ Brown, and I would watch Red Zone, I would watch the games. I don't really look at the scores on my phone that much. I'm really just watching. Dude, I was disgusted with the performance. Oh my God, this guy sucks. Like, I can't believe he can't move the ball. The offense looks terrible. He's missing people. Oh my, I'm getting crushed. I'm getting destroyed. I pull up my app, it's like 19 points. Just because that rushing floor gives you so much, like such a high floor, like 10 points on the ground is 10 points on the ground. So I think Joe Burrow has more consistency in terms of what his game looks like, but I think rushing quarterbacks are at such a premium because of that, because even when it looks bad, it's good.
Yeah. So can you still hear me? Okay. Sorry, things are switched up on me, but okay. Sorry. I see what you mean with that. And we're splitting hairs with those two. My number 6 is going to be, and I don't care what team he ends up on, Lamar Jackson. Pretty much what you just said, man. The rushing ability. I still think that running quarterbacks are capable of busting. Maybe just not as hard, but like 3-4 turnovers, you better run for a lot and you better get in the end zone. Running
Lamar on the Ravens was capable of busting, and that's sad. That was very sad.
It is. And I calling my shot now, when Lamar Jackson is on the Falcons, they're going to use him. They're going to be using him designed runs all the time, because I don't think Arthur Smith is going anywhere, and he's just a run happy guy. Lamar's the perfect quarterback, designed runs, read option, like let's do it.
Okay, I love that. That's hilarious. If Lamar Jackson really goes to the Falcons, over under 10 total passing attempts with the Arthur Smith Lamar Jackson combo.
Over, but not by much. I mean, I think he would average like 19 to 20
passing attempts. I was going to set the realistic line at 20, but that's still like, oh my God, that line is painful for the pass catchers.
Yeah, I mean, Lamar has shown that his receivers just aren't really going to be fantasy assets. It takes, I mean, Mark Andrews was the only one that's been consistent as a pass catcher for years. I mean, when has he ever really supported anybody? And Marquise Brown was like, he had some big games, so inconsistent. Rashad Bateman was like, okay, this guy's good. He got hurt, so we didn't really get to see the full extent of that. But, Lamar just hasn't – he's not the style of quarterback that's going to be able to support a lot of pass catchers. So, maybe Kyle Pitts is his new Mark Andrews. I think they're the perfect formula to put Lamar Jackson in there, and they would be successful. I'm not saying they'd be like, oh my God, they're going to win 12, 13 games, but they would have success. They would absolutely excite the fan base. They'd be like, we've got a good quarterback. Yeah. So I'm calling my shot on that. Who do you have? Do you have him as well, or are you someone else?
So funny you should say that, because obviously, no, I don't have Lamar going to the Falcons. I haven't really thought about that. That would be fun. So no, he's not my fifth. I actually have T-Law as my fifth guy. I think he takes yet another jump. This was his rookie season, in my opinion. This was Trevor Lawrence's rookie season. He basically had a truncated training camp with Urban Meyer in his first year. Yeah. So this is rookie season. I see him making yet another big jump. I think he gets more trust with his receivers. I think overall the team just has more confidence. And I think they found the formula for him. And I think he runs enough. I think he's going to run enough to give you a decent baseline there. So I just think he takes another jump. I'm just going to throw this out there. Lamar was my next guy. So there's a question mark. Where does he go? Does he stay in Baltimore? Then he probably sticks around this area. If he goes somewhere else where I think he has more exciting weapons, or he has a chance to take a jump, maybe he flips over Trevor, because those guys are kind of interchangeable to me. But realistically, I have Lamar right after that for all the reasons you said. And he's scaring me a little bit. His passing has just been so inconsistent throughout his career. The rushing cheat code quarterbacks are great, but if I feel like you've regressed as a passer some, then your offense gets hurt as a result. Your offense just is kind of, not going to stay on the field, not going to score a lot of points. So I couldn't justify a top 5 Lamar in that scenario, that he doesn't go to some crazy team that ups his value. Where are you at with the next guy?
Okay, so I'm just going to recap my quarterbacks in order. A little bit different than yours, but similar. Josh Allen, Mahomes, Hurts, Burrow, Fields, Lamar at number 6. So number 7 for me is still Justin Herbert. He's very talented. He can move. He can create things outside the pocket. He'll run every so often. I'm not really going to even put that into his analysis, because he doesn't do it enough, and he doesn't really score rushing touchdowns very often. I think that he's extremely talented. I think that the Chargers are they're going to start getting it right. They're always going to be disappointing, because that's just what the franchise does, when it really matters. But, Herbert was being drafted ahead of Mahomes in some cases this year. Right. I mean, he kind of low-key really crushed fantasy players this year. I do think he's going to be better. I just don't think he's going to be. He got overrated, and a lot of negative things happened during the course of the season that made it just really shaky for him. But he's going to have Eckler, one of the best security blankets you can have. And his receiving core, I mean, we'll see. I feel like they have to get another receiver in there, because, man, Mike Williams is never going to stay healthy. Keenan Allen, he's hurt a lot too. They need to start getting that.
Old.
He's getting older. Yeah, they need that offense to get more consistent. I think Herbert will be solid next year.
I was also a Herbert believer this year, because I really thought Josh Palmer was going to take a leap and he didn't. He doesn't look good. He's elevated by Herb. He had some good games. When Mike Williams wasn't there, he kind of took on that kind of boom or bust role down the field. But yeah, Mike Williams is the same thing to me. He's a body more than he is like a route runner. I do not like Mike Williams as a fantasy asset. Like he's going to win you some weeks, but he's going to crush you on the weeks that you still have to start him because of the price you paid. I'm out on that. Yes, I do think that they give Herb more help. So if things change, this list can change. I'm going to keep coming back to this. My next guy, I think that you will be surprised.
Well, let me say real quick, just because this kind of rounds it out for us, I have Trevor after. Because I also think he's taking a nice jump next year. I think his fantasy production is going to level off, and he's going to be a very solid starter. He can be a weekly starter for your fantasy team. I do believe that for Trevor. So you already made the points on him. Go ahead.
We're pretty close on a lot of guys, but you're going to like this one, actually. Danny Jones. I did it. I jumped on the train. I got there. I not publicly, but I've hated on this man with you for several years. You know I have. But I'm in. I like Danny Dimes. As a fantasy asset for sure. He does run. That's like one of the first things that I look at when I'm trying to rank things for fantasy. Like, if I think you're a good enough quarterback to get it done through the air, my tiebreaker between him and Herb, even though there's no question Justin Herbert's the better quarterback, but the tiebreaker is Danny scores on the ground. He scores like with his legs. He's going to run. I don't remember like what stretch of games it was, but he went through like a stretch of games where he was a top 5 fantasy QB. So I'm actually going to go there. And the caveat that I'm putting on this is I believe and assume that they're going to get him a top weapon. If he rolls back into next season with like the Wan'Dale Robinsons, the Kenny G's, the whoever the hell ever else they're going to throw out there, then he drops on this list for me. He's slated to drop if that happens. But my expectation is that they're going to get him a number 1 receiver somehow next season. Because you got to know, he's going to get a contract. He's going to get the contract before the contract. So you got to know sometime in the next 2 years if he is like truly going to take that elite franchise jump next year. So assuming he gets a top weapon, he's the next guy on the list ahead of Herbert for me.
Love where you're at with that, man. And yeah, I don't have him quite as high, but I'm a Daniel Jones fan, apologist, whatever you want to say.
Truther. I've been a truther.
A truther for Daniel Jones. You know, the thing is the fantasy production, and I have him significantly lower than you because the fantasy production hasn't really been there, and it's been extremely inconsistent because he can get you those 30 burger weeks when he's running the ball and he's picking up big yards. He rushes them to touchdown. Yes, a lot of Daniel Jones's fantasy value will depend on, does he get a stud receiver on that team? It's hard to say. If they draft a guy in the first, who knows what that guy's going to be? Who knows how long it will take for that player to become, you know, a real weapon, assuming it does happen at all. We had the conversation last week about first round receivers. They usually pan out. So we'll see. I'm not Joe Shane. I don't know what Joe Shane is thinking. He may not be liking the receivers. I don't know. It's going to take a stud receiver for Daniel Jones to become a consistent fantasy quarterback. You know, because when he's rocking 200 yards passing and 1 touchdown and hopefully no turnovers, which this year he hasn't turned the ball over much. And then you got it. You're pretty much saying his fantasy top 12 finish is reliant on, does he get a rushing touchdown? That's where his baseline has been. And that's not a guarantee. He can run the ball, sure, but maybe he only runs the ball for 4 or 5 first downs and he gets 45 yards rushing. That's a nice little boost for you, but it's not to the same level as Lamar Jackson's capable of, or the Justin Fields is capable of. So, yeah, as much as I love the guy and I think he will be a fantasy producer next year, it's very much dependent on that. And what he does have going for him, though, is Brian Dable ain't going nowhere. So Brian Dable has really got him to play within himself and play confidently and not be afraid to lower his goddamn shoulder on the dude. So when he running the ball. In that spot, I have Dak. And Dak, he would have been better.
Black Kirk Cousins, baby.
Dude, I think he's better than Kirk Cousins, but even if not, like,
unfair. I'm being unfair. I'm still mad about my Bucks losing.
Dak, he's a consistent guy. And he's not a running quarterback at all. Sure, he can pick up the first down with his legs if he needs to, as most QBs should be able to. If it's sitting there right in front of him, take it, man. Take it.
He's not a total statue.
Oh, no, not at all. Not at all. He's got functional mobility, but that's not his game. His game is to let the offense just operate and let CeeDee Lamb get open, let Michael Gallup get open, let people forget Dalton Schultz is a person. Let his running game just control the offense, and he's just very much a very solid leader for that offense. And people kill you when you say the term game manager because it's a negative connotation, but it's not. He's the perfect manager for that offense, and he gets points doing it. He gets fantasy points doing it. So he's really good at his role. And Dallas has some fantastic coordinators. There's a good chance they lose their offensive coordinator next year. That is that would be something that would make me a little bit more weary of Dak. But as I've said this whole episode, consistency is very important to me at quarterback position. I do not want to have to be scrambling to find production at my quarterback position. That's so frustrating. It's so annoying. You're going to lose so many matchups every year just being like, stream this guy, stream that guy, stream this guy. It's a viable option, but it's it's like at the roulette table, just black or red, black or red, black or red, black or red. You're just hoping you hit,
Yeah, absolutely. And he has the weapons. I think that's the other thing. When my next tier, when I'm trying to decipher between all of these good quarterbacks, of the number one question of does he score on the ground? The second question is, does he have elite weapons? And he absolutely does.
Yeah, he does. Who do you got after that?
So did we talk about the fact that I had Herbert next? I do have Herbert next.
Yeah.
For the same reasons you did.
Yeah.
He's just legit good. I'm scared about his weapons. I really am. Eckler is awesome. Keenan Allen is the ultimate security blanket, but he's getting older. Yeah. They need help on the other side. Mike Williams is fine. I just don't love him. But yeah, that's why Danny went ahead of Herbert. It's going to be whoever gets the great receiver. If your dream scenario and Nuke goes to New York, that's going to be the big projected jump for me. Right after, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, upon further review of last episode, I think you're right. I don't think Nuke is going to command a first round pick, by the way. So you convinced me on that one after I listened to it. But anyways, that's all I want to say. You go ahead.
Thanks, man. I'm glad you came around.
I always come around for you, Paul.
Hey, now the next pick that I actually have is probably not as sexy, but it's Goff.
Okay.
he's really shown me something this year. Like I think that it was an easy joke going into last season and the season before. You know, got traded for Stafford, probably felt like a throw-in piece, probably felt like a bridge quarterback. And, you know, frankly, he might actually be a bridge quarterback, but I think that he's done well enough that he's a viable fantasy option. He's got amazing receivers. Amon-Ra is that dude. He is not a fluke. He's legitimately good. I do think, like, I think it was really weird that they traded away TJ Hawkinson for what they traded him away for. Like, I get that, you know, they wanted some picks, but I don't understand, like, you have a young tight end that is actually good, and there's not a lot of those in the league. Why you trade him away? I digress. But I think Jameson Williams is actually healthy next year. He's dripping with talent, so I think that offense gets better. I don't think the defense gets much better. So volume-based Detroit Jared Goff goodness, I think, continues and gives him top 10 value next year. What do you think?
I think it's incredible that we're not even talking about Aaron Rodgers. And we're talking about Jared Goff right now. You know, but there's a reason for that. And you know, the other one who I don't know if he made your top 12, but he ended up like, I want to say like top 5, top 6.
That was tough. That was tough for me. I know who you're going to say.
Geno Smith. Yeah. He was consistent. He just didn't blow up at any week. So it's like, you don't remember, unless you had him on your team all year, you don't remember much about it because it's like, okay, he was consistently getting you 15 to 20 points, which is nice. If you're getting that every single week, you're like, okay, as long as the roster around him is good, that's fine. But anyways, I'm kind of veering off track. I don't want to do that too much. Yeah, Jared Goff, he's like my number 12. He's my number 12. Ahead of him, though, scary, but I have Tua.
Oh, man. Yes. I was wondering about that. Yeah, these last three are really hard. This is tough because he was there for me too.
They're tough. I got to put my fellow lefty in there, though. When Tua is there playing football, obviously, and they have those two weapons on the field.
The most electric 1-2 punch in the game.
Yeah, any play has potential to be a super yak touchdown. Counts exactly the same for Tua, whether he throws the ball 5 yards, through the air, or he throws it 50 yards through the air. Those yards, they count the same. Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle absolutely elevate Tua to a point for me where they're healthy. He's good. The problem with Tua, besides the injury, that's obvious. Yeah, I know. That's a scary thing. But if one of those guys, especially if it's Tyreek, if they miss time, his value sinks pretty hard.
He gives you nothing on the ground.
Yeah, he's not running the ball. And you know what? With his head injuries, he probably shouldn't be. He shouldn't be putting himself in harm's way at all.
It's arguable if he should even be out there at all, in my opinion. But that's another thing.
Right. Who knows? That's up to the person himself and his family and the Dolphins and whatever. But yeah, Tua is a guy who you can take in like probably the 9th or 10th round before like all the frittatas start taking their second quarterback around that time. Around that range.
Frustrating. I hate that.
It's annoying when you're like, I'm waiting on QB, and then people are like, I think I need this quarterback. It's like, No, you don't. God damn it, stop. But like, it happens though. You have to be careful that's a that's a slippery slope you're playing by letting that quarterback.
I had to trade for Dak. I had to give value for Dak just to get some consistency out of quarterback because they killed me with that. I was like, oh, okay, all these people have quarterbacks. I can wait. Back up. And now I'm dead.
Yeah. I was like about to take Dak Prescott, and then he got drafted the guy took back-to-back quarterbacks. He took Brady and then he took Dak. I'm like, why did you do that? Why did you do that to me? Like, come on, dude. And I ended up just punting the position completely. And like, I don't even remember who my quarterback was week 1. Like, who knows? That was forever ago. But
I think the line for me is always Kirk. It's always Kirk Cousins is like the absolute bottom like line of like the last quarterback that I could actually take as a starter. And that's what happened to me. And so, now it's like we're in the double-digit rounds, and I've completely punted quarterback. And then that song is playing in my head. Hello, darkness, my old friend. I ended up with Kirk again.
Yeah, and that's like not where you want to be. And funny enough, like that's the crazy thing about quarterback, and this is why the late QB strategy can work, is because then you have guys like Justin Fields and Geno Smith, who we're talking about could be a top 12 quarterback next year, who were waiver wire guys, But anyways, my last one, we kind of like lost our order here a little bit, but my number 12 is Daniel Jones, because I believe that he's got enough chemistry with the guys on the roster now, and his rushing ability, it's always going to be a part of the offense now. It has to be. Their offense operates best when Daniel Jones is threatening with his legs. So I don't see any reason why the Giants offense would take that out of a game plan, So yeah, I mean, and if Daniel can run for 60, 70 yards a game, tremendous baseline, even if his passing isn't going to be like gaudy numbers. Hey, if he gets you one passing touchdown, one rushing touchdown, and doesn't turn the ball over, which has been like happening, hey, he's getting you about 20 points a game, and that's great. But he's gonna have dud games where that doesn't happen, and he has some turnovers. So, yeah, you go ahead and round out the rest of your top 12.
Yeah, absolutely. So Dak came right after there. All the same reasons. He's got a good team. He is a good quarterback. He doesn't, he's not gonna like. He's not gonna excite you a crazy amount, but he's solid for sure. And then the last man, this was really tough for me to fully round it out. And all of this, like I'm going to cop out and base this on a couple different factors. So I am between Tua and A-Rod for my last spot. I know.
Yeah. Makes sense.
Aaron Rodgers, this past year, terrible. But the questions and the toss-up between them is Tua healthy? Is his brain okay? That's my question mark with Tua. And my question mark with Rodgers, do they finally get him the number one receiver that he deserves? They finally do it. He's not, a particularly like superb teammate, and that's a separate conversation. But I do actually think that he hasn't lost anything. He's not cooked the way Brady's cooked. He has it. He just needs guys that win down the field. So if he gets one of those guys, he rounds out my top 12.
Yeah, okay. And I have Rodgers, like he's right there on the cusp too. Absolutely. A lot of that's going to depend on, and you know what? His O-line wasn't healthy all year either.
Yeah.
And that hurt him. That hurt him too. So, their O-line should be formidable enough next year. And yeah, he's got to get another weapon to pair with Christian Watson. Somebody who, I think a lot of it was, he didn't have a security blanket this year. I mean, Randall Cobb was like in and out, but like Huh?
Outside of Aaron Jones.
Well, yeah, I mean, like, yeah, sure. He threw the ball to Aaron Jones a lot, but he needs somebody. He needs a good possession guy on that team.
Yeah,
And
it's one that isn't a million years old like Cobb.
Yeah, Cobb's up there, and yeah, he's trustworthy, but he's not. They're not. I don't think I have to go look at his snap counts. I'm assuming he didn't get a super high snap count. Would be my guess. So yeah, they need somebody there that can really take the pressure off. And but yeah, Rodgers. Listen, if you do punt quarterback, and you're sitting there in the 12th round with no QB, and you take Rodgers, you could do worse. But that's just to be said about that position. You can almost always do worse at quarterback. You can find guys late, and that's the argument. But all right, man, that went on. That was a good conversation.
Yeah, this is gonna
Let's
be
get into this quick.
I don't have a timer in front of me. This is gonna be a long one.
Yeah, I think we're working on like an hour and a half right now. So
Strap
I had, I should honestly start a timer on my phone. Not to say we can't, but anyways, we're gonna do something fun here at the end. Well, first of all, let's go quick with our picks, and then we'll do something fun.
Yeah.
Who you taking? Who you taking for the first game today? And that's going to be Jags at Chiefs.
The Chiefs. The Jags are a great story. They're too good. The Chiefs are too good. They can beat you in too many different ways. Yes, their defense is suspect, but ultimately, they're not going to choke the way the Chargers choke. They actually have playoff performers on the team. Patrick Mahomes is on his way to steal the GOAT status from Tom Brady if he continues on the way that he's going right now. So it's the Chiefs.
Yeah, and one of our friends that plays in our main league, huge Jags fan. Gotta love the momentum they have, but look what it took. Look what it took for them to win. It basically took a collapse for them to win. That ain't happened to the Chiefs, man. So yes, I have the Chiefs as well. And I agree with you. Mahomes is a killer. Herbert is not the same killer. And Brandon Staley's not on the other side of that field. It's Andy Reid.
Right. The Jags are ascending. They're exciting. It's not their year. It's not their year to do it.
Yeah, too early. And I imagine you'll have similar analysis for the next one. So what do you think about Giants at Eagles?
Yeah, I mean, I know that you're excited for me to double down on my terrible take from last week, but it's different. The Vikings are fraud. They had a negative point differential. The Giants, by the way, also have a negative point differential, as you know. The Eagles don't. The Eagles, I think, are just a better team. If assuming Hurts is mostly healthy, which I think he is, I just think that when I make a consideration to all the levels of the team, right? Hurts or Daniel Jones, I kind of have to take Hurts right now. Their receiving options destroy the Giants' receiving options. Their secondary is really good. They don't have the best rushing defense, which I think is kind of ironic how their team is built, but their offensive line is amazing. If the Giants can run down their throats and slow the game down, I think they can, sloppy their way to a win. But I'm taking the Eagles. I'm taking the chalk. I think the Giants, they end up running into the wall this week.
Yeah, I'd say that most people would agree with you, and I wouldn't say that your Vikings take last week was terrible. I mean, they were 7-point favorites. They were home. They had a better record. I don't discredit anybody for taking the Vikings last week just because the Giants won. It's the NFL. These games are freaking close, man.
Their defense is terrible. Their defense really shocked me with how terrible they are.
Yeah. So I am going to take the homer pick, and I'm going to put a score prediction in. 24-23 Giants. Because if they win, It's going to have to be by the skin of their teeth. What a great roster does for any team is give you a bigger margin of error. The
Right.
Giants do not have that margin of error on their team. They really have to play close to perfect to win against really good teams. Eagles are a better team. There's no doubt about that. They
call
are.
a game and execute a great game.
Yeah. The X factor that the Giants have is really two things. Pass rush, gotta contain Hurts and actually like fluster him. And Daniel Jones has to be able to run the ball. The Eagles know that. They're not going to surprise anybody at this point of the season, you know? So they just have to execute a very solid, near perfect game plan. But magic happens in the NFL all the time. I'm going to take the Magic 24-23 Giants. So tomorrow we got Bengals at Bills. What are you thinking there?
So this one was surprisingly harder for me. My first instinct was Bills all the way. I love the Bills. They're loose with the football, man. That's the scariest part to me. And they're loose with the football against Miami, who really couldn't kill them. Like, I think Miami scared them a little bit, and I think they kind of sleptwalked into the matchup a little bit too. But if you turn the ball over against Joe Burrow and the Bengals, like they can hurt you and they can get you in a bad position. You know what? I'm gonna take the Bengals. I'm actually, that's gonna be pretty much my only upset basically pick. I'm gonna take the Bengals just because like I'm afraid that Buffalo shoots themselves in the foot, makes their own mistakes, and the Bengals take advantage of it. Even though like I want the Bills to win and I think they're the better team, I'm just gonna take Bengals.
I'm going to take the Bills, and this is going to be a close game. It really should be a close game. I think the difference is Cincinnati's defense is very frustrating and underwhelming. They have players on their team, on their defense. They have good players on their defense. They just seem like they can never like be dominant. And I just think that Josh Allen is going to be able to find a way to just that one more drive than the Bengals will. I think it's going to be that one more drive that Josh Allen just pulls out a little bit more magic than Joe Burrow is able to. And that should be a fun one, probably the most fun game to watch of the weekend,
I'm pumped for that game, no doubt. And I'm with you. The Bills should win.
Yeah.
They should win the game. They're the better team overall. It's just lately they've been kind of scaring me with these turnovers.
For sure. And there's precedent for that. So should be a fun game. And then the last one, we got Cowboys at 49ers.
I'm going to take the boys. Even though their fan base is like incredibly annoying and the 49ers have an amazing roster, incredible roster. Man, I can't get myself to do it. I can't get myself to say the third string quarterback is going to take them all the way. I just can't. Maybe Shanahan is that good. Maybe I'm an idiot. Maybe I'm a loser. Maybe Shanahan is the best coach of all time. Maybe this roster can take any quarterback. Maybe I can go there and win a couple games in San Francisco behind Trent Williams and toss some 5-yard screens to Debo and McCaffrey. Maybe anybody can do it, but I guess my conventional brain can't process that, and I'm going to take the team that has their healthy starting quarterback to score points and be able to win the matchup. But what do you think?
That's a close game on paper. Taking the 49ers. Sometimes the draft stock of a quarterback just, it doesn't matter anymore. When they've shown you they're capable of efficiently running an offense, then they're capable. I think Shanahan is going to come up with a game plan where Brock Purdy doesn't get slammed into the ground. And because I said it last week, I'll say it again. Dallas's defense is streaky. You let them start rolling, that snowball will smash you in the face pretty hard. I think Shanahan is able to avoid that with quick passing game, running the ball, obviously, screens, whatever. 49ers are just so good on third downs, and I think that the equalizer all the time, San Francisco's defense is nasty. They are so fundamentally sound.
And they're at home.
And their defense is going to be able to Dallas's line is banged up. So, yeah, I'm going to take the 49ers on that one.
Yeah, it's so are you a believer? Brock Brady.
No, we're not at that point yet. We're not. There's a question: is he even the starter next year? Like, I'm pretty sure Garoppolo's gonna walk. I think that they're gonna just let him walk. And now you have the Trey Lance, Brock Purdy quarterback controversy. I don't know. It's hard to say what the 49ers are going to do there. I don't even want to get into that, man. Let's get into our fantasy playoff matchup. So how we're going to do this is it's going to be a snake draft. We're each going to get 5 players, 1 QB, 2 running backs, 2 pass catchers. Doesn't have to be receivers. Wide receivers. It can be a tight end, obviously. And yeah, we'll calculate the scores and see how we do. And it's going to be cumulative for the rest of throughout the Super Bowl and through the Super Bowl, I should say. And yeah, what do you think winners should get?
Oh, that's a good question. I haven't even thought about stakes.
There you go. Here's your answer. Steaks. Steak dinner.
Steak dinner on the loser. Next time you're in town,
we'll virtually shake on it. It sounds good.
Let's do it.
So I can't wait until you take me to Ruth Chris.
I actually have a better place. I like. I don't know if you've been there. Linda's La Cantina out here in Orlando.
No,
dude,
not even heard of it.
It's legit. It's like it's been there forever, like since like the 50s or some shit. But I'm telling you, like, Ruth's Chris, like, sucks in comparison to the value you get. It's like you won't be disappointed.
All right. So, would you want first pick or do you want the next 2 picks? Because we'll just flip flop it like that, and we'll,
You take first. You take first pick.
First pick for me.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I'm gonna go ahead and take. I'll take McCaffrey then.
Yeah. If I had first, I would have definitely done that. Then let me get. AJ Brown and Travis Kelce.
Okay. I'm just putting it on my phone, so we know. All right. So you got okay. So then I'll take the next 2 picks. I'm gonna go with Jamar and Stephon Diggs.
Damn, yeah. I was thinking about him or AJ Brown. I kind of did want him, but that's neither here nor there now.
All right. You got 2 picks.
Give me Hurts. Give me Jalen Hurts for the stack.
Okay.
And Saquon.
Okay. I like it. All right. So you have.
Where does that put us?
And then I have 3 players. You have 4. So then I will take my last 2 picks. It's going to be Josh Allen. And now I need a running back. I took my receivers. I took my QB. So let's see. You go through these matchups real quick. I took CMC. So I shall take Miles Sanders.
Nice.
And then I'm assuming you are taking Patrick Mahomes, would be my guess. Or no, you took Hurts. What am I saying?
Yeah, Hurts. I took Hurts.
You got,
I probably should have taken Mahomes.
So yeah,
So
you've got 2 pass catch. You need a running back. You need a running back as well. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like probably the stupidly right answer is going to be like circle jerk McKinnon.
Right.
I just don't love hitching my wagons to like a Joe Mixon or anything like that. I'll go crazy. Give me Trav Etienne.
You want Etienne? Okay. Cool. I considered that with my last pick as well. It was either that. I was thinking of him, Tony Pollard, or Sanders, but it's too late to go back now. So that's what
I like your team. I put 0 thought into this. This was farting some picks out there. But it's possible you get a quick steak dinner on your boy.
Well, let's see. It's cumulative, so we still got more games to go. I didn't win shit. We just drafted. We'll see. You never know. I mean, I hope Saquon puts up a lot of points. Okay, so my team, just to recap, is going to be Josh Allen's my QB, CMC, Miles Sanders are my Christian McCaffrey, I should say, if you don't know CMC. As my running backs, Jamar Chase and Stephon Diggs. And Paul, you have?
Those are wide receivers.
Huh?
I said those are wide receivers. You said running backs.
Sorry. My running backs are Christian McCaffrey and Miles Sanders. My receivers are Jamar Chase and Stephon Diggs.
Yeah.
And you say your team.
Yep. I've got Jalen Hurts, AJ Brizzy, Trav Kelsey as the other wide receiver.
Pass catcher, yep.
Saquon and Trav.
Love it, man. Good luck to you. Calculate these scores after the games tomorrow night. We'll see where we stand. We'll talk about it next podcast. It's been a long one. It's been a good one. Good talking to you, bro. And thank you for joining us on the New World Fantasy Football Podcast. Like, subscribe, do all the fun stuff.
Football.
Enjoy the playoffs. Peace out.